Onto the bridge. The growl of the engine was a familiar comfort as Jason steered the Bentley along the coastal highway. Rain hammered against the windscreen, blurring the already fading light. He'd pushed his luck, staying late at the studio, and now the approaching storm was making his trip back to the city a misery. He squinted, trying to make out the road ahead. Just before the old concrete bridge arched over the highway, he saw it. A beat-up, faded blue sedan pulled haphazardly onto the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly against the gloom. He almost kept driving. He was tired, the weather was worsening, and stopping meant inviting trouble, but something nagged at him. He glanced in the rearview mirror, the image of the car a fleeting memory. He cursed under his breath, the sound swallowed by the roar of the rain, and pulled over 100 yards ahead, flicking on his own hazards. He grabbed his heavy leather jacket, tugged the hood up, and jogged back toward the stranded vehicle. As he got closer, he could see someone was inside. A woman, her face pale and drawn, was bent over something in the back seat. He tapped on the driver's side window. The woman jumped, startled, and looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. She cracked the window open an inch. "Everything all right?" Jason asked, his voice rough. "We were fine," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Just a flat tire." He doubted that. He could see more than just a flat tire. The car looked like it hadn't moved in days, grime coating the windows, a deflated balloon stuck to the radio antenna. And the woman, her clothes were rumpled, her hair tangled, and she had dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "You got a spare?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, and I don't know how to change it anyway." Jason sighed inwardly. "Look, it's getting dark and this storm's only going to get worse. There's a diner about 5 miles back. Why don't I give you a lift?" She glanced nervously at the back seat. I can't. I have someone with me." He followed her gaze and saw a small baby bundled in a blanket in the back. The baby stirred and let out a weak cry. "Right," Jason said, his tone softening. He understood now. "Look, I'll be right back." He turned and headed back to his car, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He drove back to the diner, a greasy spoon called Ma's Kitchen, and pulled up outside. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting a sickly green glow on the wet pavement. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of frying bacon and stale coffee. He ordered a large takeout order, a couple of burgers, fries, a grilled cheese, and a large milkshake. He added a carton of milk and a box of crackers, remembering the baby. Ma eyed him curiously, but he just paid and left, the bag heavy in his hands. Back at the bridge, the woman was standing outside the car, holding the baby close. The rain had intensified and she was shivering. He handed her the bag. "Here, get some food in you both. It's not much," but Sarah took the bag, her eyes welling up. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Jason just nodded, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Stay safe," he mumbled and turned to leave. He paused, then added, "I'll be back in the morning. We'll figure something out." He didn't know why he said it, but the words were out before he could stop them. He got back in his car and drove off, leaving Sarah standing under the bridge, the rain washing away the tears streaming down her face. A simple meal. The engine of the Bentley ticked as it cooled. Jason fiddled with the clasp of the insulated bag, finally wrestling it open. The aroma of roasted chicken and garlic mashed potatoes wafted out, a stark contrast to the stale air clinging to the interior of Sarah's car. He held it out. "Look, I got enough here to feed a bloody army. Take it." Sarah's eyes darted from the bag to him, then to Lily, who was stirring in her makeshift crib of blankets in the back seat. I couldn't. It's too much." "Much what? Food? You look like you haven't eaten a decent meal in a week." His voice was gruff, but there was a gentleness there too, a reluctant tenderness he usually kept buried deep. She chewed on her lip, her gaze fixed on the steering wheel. "We lost our place a month ago. Landlord sold it. We've been managing." Jason grunted, the sound laced with irritation and something else, something akin to shame. He knew the city was full of stories like hers. He usually managed to ignore them. "Managing how? Scrounging. We had some savings. It's dwindling." Her voice was barely a whisper. Lily started to fuss, a low, whimpery sound that escalated quickly into a full-blown cry. Sarah reached back, her hand disappearing into the blankets. "SHH, baby, it's okay. Mommy's here." Jason shifted, feeling awkward and useless. He hated the sound of a baby crying. "What's wrong with her?" Sarah brought Lily into her arms, cradling her close. The baby's face was flushed and her breathing was shallow and raspy. "I think she's got a fever. She's been like this since yesterday. I don't have any medicine." A knot tightened in Jason's stomach. He remembered a similar sound a lifetime ago, a sound he never wanted to hear again. He pointed at the bag. "Take the food and tell me what kind of medicine she needs." Sarah hesitated for another moment, then her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Ibuprofen, children's liquid, and thank you." The gratitude in her eyes was a palpable thing, almost painful to witness. Lily's hope. "Enough," Jason said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the cramped car. Sarah flinched, pulling Lily closer. "This isn't working. The kid's sick. We're going to a doctor." Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but he cut her off. "No arguments. I'm driving." He reached for Lily, but Sarah tightened her hold. "I can manage," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Yeah, manage until what? She gets worse. Look, I'm not asking, I'm telling, this isn't a debate. He softened his tone slightly, adding, just let me help, Sarah. The doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and something vaguely floral, a cloying combination that did little to calm Lily, who was now whimpering softly. Jason sat in the waiting room, trying to disappear into a magazine about deep-sea fishing, acutely aware of the curious glances thrown his way. He hated this, the forced inactivity, the feeling of being a spectacle. Sarah emerged, her face etched with a mixture of relief and worry. She has a fever and a bit of a cough. The doctor thinks it's just a cold, but he wants her to have some antibiotics just in case. Jason stood. Okay, let's get the prescription filled. At the pharmacy counter, Sarah dug in her purse, her brow furrowed. I don't think I have enough. Jason stepped forward, placing his credit card on the counter. It's taken care of. He ignored Sarah's sharp intake of breath and focused on the pharmacist, a young man with tired eyes. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Sarah buckled Lily into her car seat, her movements stiff. I don't know how I'm going to repay you. Jason leaned against the car, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Don't worry about it, just focus on getting Lily better. He paused, then added gruffly, and Sarah, get something to eat, you look like you haven't slept in days. He watched as she drove away, the taillights of her beat-up sedan disappearing into the evening traffic. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact. He needed to call a guy, someone who could find them a safe place to stay discreetly. This couldn't go on, no room at the inn. The phone felt slick in Jason's suddenly sweaty hand. Each ring echoed the hollow feeling in his chest. He'd already tried 3 shelters, 3 rejections. I'm sorry, sir, we're at capacity. The same tired, apologetic voice each time. He scrubbed a hand over his face, the rasp of stubble a small distraction. He dialed another number, the automated menu grating on his nerves. Homeless Solutions, how can I help you? A bright, cheerful voice chirped. Jason lowered his voice. I'm trying to find a place for a woman and her baby tonight. It's urgent. The cheer vanished. Are they currently unsheltered? Yes, Jason confirmed. Let me check availability. I'm so sorry, sir. We have no beds available tonight. Have you tried the city overflow shelter? Jason sighed, the sound heavy and defeated. Yeah, they're full. I can put them on a waiting list, but... The woman's voice trailed off, the unspoken futility hanging in the air. Thanks, Jason mumbled, ending the call. He glanced back at the car. Sarah was cradling Lily, humming softly. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, making the battered sedan look even more vulnerable. He started the engine. Right, well, that was a complete waste of time. All full up, he announced, trying to sound more optimistic than he felt. We'll figure something else out. There's gotta be somewhere. He drove slowly, scanning the streets. Dilapidated motels with flickering neon signs lined the darker avenues. He imagined the grime, the damp, the things that crawled in the shadows. No, not for them. Sarah shifted in her seat. Lily feels warm, she said quietly, her voice laced with worry. She touched the baby's forehead with the back of her hand. I think she might have a fever. Jason's jaw tightened, a fever on top of everything else. Okay, we need to find somewhere safe then, somewhere warm. He pulled into a deserted parking lot overlooking the city. The glittering skyline seemed a cruel mockery of their situation. He killed the engine. Silence descended, broken only by Lily's occasional fussy whimpers. I don't understand, Sarah whispered, her voice tight with emotion. How can there be no room? It's freezing out here. What are we supposed to do? Jason rested a hand on her arm, feeling the tremor that ran through her. We'll figure it out, I promise. I won't let anything happen to you or Lily. He squeezed gently. There has to be somewhere. But as he looked at Sarah's pale face, illuminated by the faint glow of the dashboard, he knew with a sinking feeling that he was running out of options, and time, a temporary haven. Sun jabbed at his phone screen, his voice a low snarl. It's me, need a solid, quiet now. He stalked the parking lot's fractured surface, the interstate's drawn a constant undercurrent. After a curt listen punctuated by grunts, he barked, just handle it, understood, top floor, end of the hall, immaculate, you hear me, spotless. He cut the connection. Turning to Sarah, still slumped behind the wheel of her beat-up sedan, Lily's soft whimpers carried on the night air. Okay, he managed, aiming for reassurance that felt manufactured. Got us a place, one night safe. Red-rimmed and hollow, Sarah's gaze flickered with a fragile hope. A place to stay, like a room. Yeah, motel, nothing great, but it's 4 walls and a roof, better than this tin can. He waved a hand at the car, dismissing it. The subtle slump of her shoulders didn't escape him. The motel, a faded turquoise eyesore, sagged against the night. Jason led the way, his mere presence enough to jolt the lethargic clerk into a semblance of service. He signed a false name, paid in cash, and pocketed the key. The room reeked faintly of disinfectant and stale smoke, a discordant note to the non-smoking sign. A double bed draped in a flimsy, patterned spread dominated the cramped space. Sarah gently laid Lily down. The baby's soft whines immediately escalated into irritated cries. I'll change her, Sarah murmured, her voice thin. She rummaged through a worn duffel, extracting a clean onesie and a package of wipes. Watching her, Jason felt a sharp stab of unease. The banal act, a mother tending to her child, felt jarringly out of sync with their desperate flight. He felt adrift. He was ill-equipped for this kind of raw vulnerability. Lily's cries ratcheted up as Sarah worked, her tiny face creased with distress. "She's probably starving," Sarah whispered, worry etching itself onto her face. "I can barely keep anything down." He raked a hand through his cropped hair. Securing a room had seemed like progress, a temporary reprieve. But it was just a stopgap, a flimsy barrier against the flood. What came next? Food, diapers, formula, a real life. Wealthy certainly, but the idea of truly caring for them, of etching himself into their lives in a lasting way, felt paralyzing. He was a man of action, not a caregiver. He could orchestrate explosions, navigate a brawl, even endure the constant glare of the cameras. But this demanded a level of investment he wasn't sure he possessed. The price of fame. The flashbulbs were a swarm of angry fireflies, stinging Sarah's eyes. One minute she was wrestling Lily into her car seat after a surprisingly pleasant trip to the park. The next, a dozen cameras were jammed in her face. Jason, ever vigilant, had positioned himself between her and the onslaught, his face a thundercloud. "Back off," he roared, his voice cutting through the clicking and shouting. "Leave them alone," but they didn't back off. They pressed closer, a relentless tide of lenses and microphones. "Jason, is this your new girlfriend? Is that your baby, Jason? What's her name?" Sarah felt Lily begin to fuss, her tiny face crumpling. The baby hated loud noises. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. This wasn't just annoying, it was terrifying. Jason managed to shepherd them into the car, his hand a reassuring weight on Sarah's back. He slammed the door shut, the sound echoing in the sudden, temporary silence. He started the engine, pulling away from the curb with a screech of tires. The paparazzi followed, a relentless parade of flashing lights in the rearview mirror. "I'm so sorry," Jason said, his voice tight with anger. "I didn't see them coming." Sarah just shook her head, too overwhelmed to speak. She glanced at Lily, who was now crying in earnest. She pulled over to a quiet side street, Jason watching her, a silent apology etched on his face. "It's okay," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt as she unbuckled Lily and held her close, rocking her gently. "It's not your fault," but it felt like his fault, or at least a consequence of his life. A life she was now, however reluctantly, caught up in. The next morning, the headlines screamed their story. Statham's secret family, action star's shocking new romance. The photos were everywhere, Jason shielding her from the cameras, Sarah looking dazed and overwhelmed, Lily's blurry, crying face. Sarah felt exposed, violated. Her sanctuary, the fragile bubble she had built around herself and Lily, had been burst. She scrolled through the online comments, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. Most were speculative, some were lewd, and a few were downright threatening. "They'll find out where we live," she whispered, the thought a cold hand gripping her heart. "They'll follow us everywhere." Jason, who had been watching her silently, reached out and took her hand. His grip was firm, reassuring. "They won't," he said, his voice low and steady. "I won't let them," but Sarah wasn't so sure. The price of fame, she was learning, was a steep one indeed, and she wasn't sure she was willing to pay it, a helping hand. Jason hated making phone calls, especially personal ones. He preferred to handle things directly with a handshake and a clear understanding. But this situation, Sarah and Lily, it needed more than just his direct approach, it needed professionals. He found a crumpled flyer for Helping Hands, a local charity focused on housing and job placement for struggling families, tucked in the glove compartment of his Bentley. He had probably grabbed it absent-mindedly from a coffee shop a while back. He dialed the number, the sound echoing in the otherwise silent car. He waded through a cheerful automated menu before finally being connected to a woman named Maria. He kept his tone clipped and businesslike, identifying himself only as Jason and explaining Sarah's situation in concise terms, omitting any mention of the five-star hotel. "We can definitely help," Maria said, her voice warm and reassuring. "We have several programs that could be a good fit." "Can she come in for an assessment tomorrow?" "I'll arrange it," Jason grunted. The next morning he drove Sarah to the Helping Hands office, a small, unassuming building tucked away on a quiet side street. Lily thankfully was in a good mood, gurgling and kicking in her car seat. Sarah looked nervous, her eyes darting around as they approached the entrance. "They seem nice on the phone," Jason offered, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Just be honest with them, tell them what you need." Sarah managed a weak smile. "I will, thank you, Jason, for everything." He waited in the car, feeling strangely restless. He watched people coming and going, ordinary folks with their own struggles and triumphs. He wondered how many stories like Sarah's were unfolding every day, hidden in plain sight. 2 hours later, Sarah emerged, her face radiating a cautious optimism. Lily was asleep in her arms. "They were wonderful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "They think they've found me a job at a bakery just a few blocks from here. It's part-time to start, but it's something, and they have a list of affordable housing options. It's not much, but it's a start." The bakery job was confirmed within a week. The The smell of warm bread and sugar clung to Sarah when she returned to the hotel each evening, a comforting aroma that filled the sterile suite. Lily seemed to thrive on it too, her little face lighting up whenever Sarah came near. The housing proved more difficult. The affordable options were either dilapidated, overcrowded, or miles from the bakery. Jason, against his better judgment, found himself driving Sarah to viewings, his presence a silent, intimidating buffer against unscrupulous landlords. Finally, they found a small, one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, clean and safe if a little noisy. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and for Sarah it was a fresh start. As he helped her move in the few belongings she had, Jason felt a sense of satisfaction he hadn't expected. It wasn't the thrill of a perfectly executed stunt or the adrenaline of a high-stakes negotiation. It was something quieter, deeper. He had given her a hand, and she was grabbing it with both of hers. Smiles and dough. The yeasty warmth of the bakery was a balm to Sarah's soul. Flour dusted her apron, a fine pale snow that settled in the creases of her worn jeans. Mrs. Petrov, a woman whose smile lines were as deep and comforting as the aroma of rising dough, showed her the ropes. Shaping sourdough loaves, glazing pastries, and even decorating delicate sugar cookies, Sarah found a rhythm in the work, a quiet satisfaction she hadn't felt in months. Lily, nestled in her carrier in a corner of the small office, gurgled contentedly, her bright eyes following the dance of Sarah's hands. The antibiotics were working wonders. Lily's cough had subsided to a gentle sniffle, her fever gone. Her skin, once pale and clammy, now possessed a rosy bloom. She was eating with gusto, gumming bananas and smearing them across her face with unrestrained joy. Each coo, each gurgle was a tiny victory, a testament to their resilience. One afternoon, the bell above the bakery door chimed, announcing a customer. Sarah glanced up from frosting a tray of eclairs and nearly dropped her pastry bag. Jason stood there, looking decidedly out of place amidst the delicate pastries and floral wallpaper. He wore a dark baseball cap pulled low, attempting to blend in, but his sheer presence seemed to suck the air from the room. Just picking up a few things, he mumbled, gesturing vaguely at the display case with a hand that looked large enough to crush a croissant. Mrs. Petrov, bless her heart, beamed at him. For the little one, perhaps. We have some lovely blueberry muffins, very soft. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, muffins, great. He grabbed a box Mrs. Petrov had filled, looking relieved to have a purchase in hand. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and approached him. Thank you, Jason, for everything. He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. Just glad you're both doing okay. He glanced over at Lily, who was now reaching for him with chubby arms. A flicker of something akin to tenderness crossed his face before he quickly masked it with a gruff expression. Gotta go, places to be. He paid for the muffins, his movements brisk and efficient, and then he was gone, leaving Sarah with the lingering scent of his cologne and a warmth that spread through her chest. Lily babbled, reaching for the box of muffins, her tiny hand leaving a sticky imprint on the cardboard. That evening, Sarah sat on the small porch of their little apartment, Lily asleep in her arms. The air was filled with the sounds of crickets chirping and the distant hum of traffic. She looked up at the stars, a million tiny pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. For the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope, a fragile belief that maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to get better. The smiles and the dough, it turned out, were a recipe for something beautiful, a friend indeed. The banquet hall buzzed with a controlled chaos Jason usually avoided. Tonight, however, he was the ringmaster. Right, less chatter, more hammer, he'd barked earlier, and the volunteers, a mix of Hollywood faces and crew members, had snapped to attention. He'd pulled in favors, twisted arms, and generally made a nuisance of himself until the hope for the street's fundraiser was a reality. He hated public speaking, but the cause outweighed his discomfort. Standing on the small stage, the spotlight felt hotter than any explosion he'd walked away from. He gripped the microphone, his knuckles white. Look, he started, his voice gravelly, I'm not good at speeches, never have been, but I saw something a few weeks ago that stuck with me, a mother, a baby living in a damn car, freezing. He paused, the image still sharp in his mind. Nobody deserves that, not in this city, not anywhere. He scanned the room, seeing familiar faces, some surprised to see him in this role. We can't solve everything tonight, but we can make a dent. We can give someone a fighting chance, so open your wallets, open your hearts, and let's actually do something. He stepped back, the applause surprisingly loud. He spotted his publicist waving frantically from the side, probably thrilled he hadn't sworn. Later, circulating through the crowd, he felt a tap on his arm. It was Emily, the social worker who'd helped Sarah. They're here, she said, gesturing towards the back of the hall. He saw Sarah first. She was wearing a simple but elegant dress, her hair pulled back, revealing the delicate curve of her neck. She looked different, stronger. Lily was nestled in her arms, gurgling happily. He approached them, a rare, genuine smile spreading across his face. Sarah, he said, his voice softer than anyone in the room had probably ever heard. You made it. Sarah's cheeks flushed. Thank you, Jason, for everything. This is, she gestured around, overwhelming. Overwhelmingly good, I hope, he said, his eyes on Lily. The baby reached out a chubby hand, grabbing his finger. He felt a tug not just on his finger, but something deeper. He watched them interact, saw the easy confidence Sarah now possessed, the bright curiosity in Lily's eyes. He'd contributed to this. He'd helped create this. The realization hit him with more force than any stunt he'd ever performed. He leaned closer, speaking quietly to Sarah. How are you both really doing? Sarah met his gaze, her eyes filled with gratitude. We're thriving, Jason, because of you. Lily, oblivious to the weight of the moment, let out a delighted squeal, and Jason couldn't help but laugh. He might still hate the spotlight, but tonight it felt like it was shining on something worthwhile.